Well, here we are, not only near the end of another season of Born on the Corner, but not too far away from the end of 2008. As such, I'm announcing that in the last days of this year, I will make a special video for the fans, based not only on their interest in the show, but hopefully their interest in the world around them. It will be a special send-off to those who made their presence known through complete and total stupidity or just being a full-out jackass. I call it the First Annual Douchebag of the Year Award. By leaving me messages, comments, or video responses, you can give your vote for a public figure that you think made the biggest ass of him or herself this year, and the winner will be chosen based on either the popular vote or originality. You can nominate anyone that you want, but here are some examples based on the people that I've already made fun of this year. Charles McVitie and the so-called Canadian Family Action Coalition for using ignorance, bullying tactics, and flat-out lies to promote censorship of gay-friendly art, try to stop equal rights battles from getting to the courts, and actually state that atheists in this country do not have rights, even though our Charter of Rights and Freedoms clearly says otherwise. Hamilton's Police Services Board for wanting to make swearing in downtown Hamilton an arrestable offense, yet doing bugger all about corrupt cops who either arrest innocent people at the drop of a hat or sexually harass other officers with total impunity. The 5 million or so Californians who chose once again to spit in the face of the Constitution and ban marriage to gays and lesbians. This particularly goes for the large amount of blacks who voted for the ban, given that less than 50 years ago they too had to fight tooth and nail for their own rights to be recognized. General Motors for ignoring the dropping demand for large cars and trucks over the last 20 years or so, leading to the likely bankruptcy of the company in the next 6 months, and then having the nerve to cry for yet another bailout when they clearly don't know how to spend the money they have properly. Dan Hilliard, the owner of Nathaniel's restaurant Known Sound, for suspending a waitress who shaved her head for a cancer fundraiser and then attacking her over bringing it to the public's attention. He claimed that the shaving and publicity hurt his restaurant's image, apparently not considering that it might have more to do with his acting like a cold-hearted bastard. Former Ontario Health Minister George Smitherman and the Ontario Liberal government in general for refusing to call a proper investigation into this year's C. difficile epidemic, despite the fact that it cost hundreds of lives. This silence is probably due to the fact that it all happened on Smitherman's watch. The various Puritans and homophobes in this country for thinking that giving people easy access to condoms and sex education will cause full-blown orgies to erupt on every street corner. Yet they are very keen to ignore the fact that abstinence-only sex ed leads to an increase in accidental pregnancies and STD infections. Comic actor turned pundit Ben Stein for actually comparing evolution-friendly scientists to the Nazis, and thinking that that's a reasonable argument. The total scumbags who ran over Nick Perkins, dragged him down a highway, and left him for dead. For that matter, anyone who thinks that getting behind the wheel is a license to run down and kill anyone that you see. The various neoconservative war criminals, including President George W. Bush, who seem to think that beating up teenage Muslim prisoners and railroading them through unfair trials is any way to preserve the honor and security of North America. America's gun lobby for ensuring that the right to bear arms is now officially distorted, and making it perfectly legal for historically violent criminals to carry a small arsenal of weapons in their homes. They invariably claim that it's for personal protection, yet are completely oblivious to the fact that it's because of this lack of control that a total sociopath was able to buy a small arsenal and shoot up Virginia Tech. Prime Minister Stephen Harper for not only colluding with George W. Bush in his undermining of international law and progress, but for calling a hideously expensive, unnecessary, illegal, and grossly dishonest election. All this because he couldn't take being called into account for his my way or the highway approach, his various attempts at suppressing criticism, and at least a couple of accusations of corruption and fraud in his government. Hamilton and Niagara animal control agencies for doing nothing when violent or sick animals become a clear and present danger to families. PETA, or People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, for trying to exploit the gruesome murder of Tim McLean for their personal gain. Apparently their idea of ethics doesn't include having enough class to not drag a dead man into your protest before his body has even been put to rest. Numerous companies, corporations, and the upper class in general for bitching and complaining about the idea of paying some taxes on their income, when most of the world is not only underpaid and overtaxed, but either worked to the bone or sweating bullets about whether or not they're even going to have jobs in the next little while. Actually, this should get a double nomination for deregulating the world into this mess in the first place. Soon-to-be ex-Liberal Party leader Stéphane Dion for giving Stephen Harper the freedom to run this country over with a steamroller. The various xenophobic morons in the U.S. for buying into some stupid notion that Barack Obama is secretly a Muslim terrorist, when all it would take is 5 minutes of reading a fucking newspaper to realize that this isn't true. Nebraska Senator Ernie Chambers for trying to make a point about access to courts by filing a lawsuit against God, thereby making himself look like a complete tool in front of the American Midwest. And finally, Alaska Governor Sarah Palin for not only being a complete embarrassment to women everywhere, but for being bound and determined to sabotage education and women's rights in the states. and being so stupid that you can't realize that our presence will only doom the Republican Party to obscurity. There you have it. Those are just some of the ideas that I have off the top of my head. You can vote for any of them or somebody else of your own choice. Anytime between now and December the 19th. The 2008 Douchebag of the Year will be announced sometime between then and New Year's Eve. Enough said.